Hey guys, it's Alex with Hammond Watch. I'm here today with an Orient Bambino version 4. And this one's reference is FAC08003A0. I think it's one of my favorite as far as the color scheme is considered. I think it's incredibly handsome, but these version 4 watches are a little bit divisive because of the sizing. You know, if you have a smaller wrist or are more of maybe a watch purist, you probably prefer something a little bit more petite in a dress watch. But I think these are really killer, especially if worn in more casual situations. Let's run through that sizing. So it is a 42 millimeter case. I see 41 listed places. I haven't gotten anything close to 41, no matter where I measure it. The lug to lug is 48.5. So, you know, in a sports watch world, very reasonable. In a dress watch world, that's a pretty big footprint. You have a 6 millimeter push-pull crown, and while you do get a screw-down case back, the watch only carries 30 meters of water resistance, so, you know, washing your hands, getting caught in the rain, no problems at all, but I don't know if this is something that I would take for a swim. My favorite aspect of the watch is actually this thickness. Even with this domed mineral crystal, you're looking at 11.5 millimeters thick. You've got about 3-ish millimeters of that being the crystal itself. So the watch, while wide, is incredibly light, and it sits nice on wrist because there's just not a lot of like heft or bulk to it outside of just, you know, being kind of wide. You have a 22 millimeter lug width, so no problems finding aftermarket straps. The strap they use here is like a suede stitched onto the back of leather. You know, it'll be durable enough. It's not the highest quality, but I think it shows that these watches are maybe meant to be worn a little bit more in casual situations than being a straightforward dress watch. The strap tapers down to 20 millimeters and then back up to 24 with the buckle. The movement inside is a hacking and hand winding Orient caliber 46724. Getting a in-house automatic movement at prices this low is pretty incredible. I think something that we're starting to take for granted nowadays with more and more really affordable options. One of the issues with these movements though, so this one's running at minus 11 seconds. There's not a lot of published information. Like there's not, Orient doesn't provide you with the tolerances that they say these operate within. It is just kind of their general workhorse automatic. You know, 40-hour power reserve. It does everything you need it to, but it's a little bit tricky to service as well. You know, so we don't really know the accuracy. Parts are a little bit hard to come by. So it's just a tricky kind of ownership process. And you have to know what you're getting into. It feels like these are a little bit more leaning towards the disposable side of things, or just movement swaps if you run into issues. And that's really not my favorite thing in the world. All of that said, I haven't ever had issues with the FAC08003A0, and I think in general it is a pretty high quality movement. So apart from really liking the color scheme of rose gold tone over gray, I think they did a great job with execution here. The printing of Orient automatic and water resistant is incredibly crisp, as is the minute track and frame date window. I love how dynamic the sunburst dial is. You get great variance in shades of gray, and it makes it really visually interesting because otherwise it's a pretty simple watch. There's not a whole lot going on, so you really need an attractive dial to kind of pull it all together and make it worth wearing. The applied indices are all polished. They look really nice and kind of come and go with the light. I also think that the color matched Orient logo applied above the text looks really sharp. I don't love that they tried to tie in the red by doing a red tip to the seconds hand, but that's a relatively small gripe. In general, I don't care for the hands at all. I think that they are a beautiful shape. I just wish that the minute hand went all the way out to the track and that the hour hand kind of just touched or got really close to the end of each index. These feel like a set of hands that were on a smaller Bambino and just thrown into this sized up version as kind of a cost saving measure. So that's a little bit disappointing, but all things considered, a pretty small gripe. The case itself is very simple and fully polished, just not a whole lot going on. Although I did want to note there is a small lip below the bezel area here. It tends to get dirty and you get a fair amount of debris in there. It can be a little bit tricky to clean out, especially when you're worried about scratching up your case. But in general, just not much to complain about. It's an attractive watch at a really nice price. So here we are on my 7.5 to 7 3/4 inch wrist. It's not a heavy watch, and being that it is so wide and it has a 22mm strap, it feels very planted. There's no wobble at all. The weight is spread out very nicely. So I could definitely see forgetting that it's on wrist, especially considering its thickness. It wears really tight and close to you, and in general, I'm a pretty big fan. So in a world where we see more and more large sports watches being worn with suits, I think the argument that watches like this are too big is starting to fade away and ring a little hollow. It just comes down to personal style. Wear what makes you feel good and what you think looks nice, and then kind of forget anyone else's opinion. I personally would wear these more in a casual type setting. But in general, I don't think you're going to have any problem pulling it off with any type of dressy attire. It's a fantastic buy too. You're looking at a retail of $310. You can go on Joma Shop or Creation Watches and pick them up around $125. And if you go used, $80 to $100 for a really nice example. And I think that's incredible given how attractive the watches are. And having an in-house automatic movement, it's really a value that's hard to beat nowadays. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It really helps in YouTube's algorithm. Also, consider subscribing. I'm putting out watch content about twice a week, and I hope to see you in the next one.